Welcome, everyone, to the Game or Die podcast. My name is Ryan Moore, and this is the live recording on Twitch and YouTube for episode 78. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, but not that much as the last few weeks. I've been going pretty hardcore into streaming every day, multiple hours, multiple times per day, multiple hours. It's been a crazy journey over the last about month or so. And I've been playing and beating a ton of games. So I want to talk about more that I have over the last couple of weeks here. Since last week, I was not able to do a podcast. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through some of the games that I've been playing and beating on stream, and then talk about some games that I'm still looking forward to, which I've kind of covered because there's not a whole lot coming out this year, or at least this month. February is a pretty short month. And it doesn't have a whole lot of big games coming out. But there's a few that I've kind of looked at and am looking forward to, so I'll talk about that as much. And then we will also cover the game of the month a little bit in more depth this week. So that's what we're going to be talking about on this episode of the Game or Die podcast, which again is now starting to be recorded live as well, streaming out on Twitch, YouTube, Kick, and a couple other different places. X, and trying to get Instagram working, but Instagram's a little bit weirder with the live streaming. They're a little bit more strict, and there's some rules there that makes it a little bit more complicated. But who cares about that? Let's get into the games that I've been playing. So over the last several weeks that I've been streaming pretty hardcore, I've started kind of struggling a little bit to figure out what I want to play on stream. Because in the middle of a stream, I might beat a game and then have to switch gears to something else. And I have a few like back pocket ideas, but there's a lot of ideas that I want to execute on over the course of my streaming career. And it's just not feasible to instantly go to that stuff. So I'm really struggling to figure out what I want to play. And I usually take suggestions from the chat. Chat will bring up a game and I go, oh yeah, let's play that. And I'll just switch to it on the fly. Or sometimes I'll go, you know what? I want to actually hold off on that game, like Mega Man, for example, because I would like to do a whole series playthrough. And the way that I structure my Twitch channel is when I stream, I like having a themed, thing for that stream. So I've created this idea of shows to basically create themes around. So we have something like Series Fatigue, which is a show that I'll do on X amount of days per, stream. And basically that is me going through a series. The first series that we've gone through all the way through is the Donkey Kong Country series. So we started with Donkey Kong Country 1 because I just felt like playing it. But once I finished playing it, I had so much fun that I wanted to go into Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Conquest. So we started doing that. And then once I finished that, I was like, dude, well, we got to play Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie's Double Trouble. And so we went into that. And that's kind of the idea of how I structure my streams is there's games, right? There's series that I want to go through. And so it's all collaborated and kind of condensed into a show-like format. Now, with those shows, I do want to make sure that they are structured in a way that makes it comfortable and easy for the viewer to watch along and kind of, have a set schedule. So I don't want to just go through a series, every stream for every day that I stream until I'm done with it. Got to have a little bit of variety, a little spice of life, right? So that's kind of how I'm doing my streams right now, and it's been a blast so far. It's been really fun. However, because of the amount of time that I stream over the last couple of months here, it has been really hard to finish a stream, kind of recollect my thoughts, and then get back into a stream a few hours later without having a little bit of time to organize, a little bit of time for planning. That's kind of one of the bad things that I'm bad at right now is planning out the streams with, certain games and certain themes and certain shows on a set schedule. So I'm working through that. I'm working and trying really hard to make sure that I plan out that stuff in a nice, easy way for the viewer to, kind of reliably watch and know, oh, on Mondays, we're going to do this. On Tuesdays, we're going to do that. And so that's just kind of one of my big, hurdles right now, is to figure out a way to structure these streams to make it easy. One of those structures is a podcast. So that's what we're doing right now. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and no one is outside. No one is driving around. I went out driving just a little bit ago, and man, no one's on the road. It's crazy. It's 2:00 in the afternoon, and no one is out because it's Super Bowl. Everyone's planning all their parties and stuff like that. So I thought this would be a perfect time for the podcast, and that's what I'm doing. Is I'm kind of structuring Sunday afternoon streams a little bit less low key, or a little bit low key, a little bit kind of, relaxed environment where I can just kind of talk about the streams and talk about the games that I've been playing and the podcast and do all that fun stuff on a Sunday afternoon. That sounds nice and relaxing, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Next, then we're going to kind of transition into games later tonight. And it's like, crap, what do I do? So I am still trying to figure that out, but I'm kind of starting to get a little bit of a set schedule. Podcasts on Sunday afternoons. That way that when I record these podcasts, they're going to be shorter than my normal streams by a couple hours usually. Even last night, started 11 p.m., went all the way till 3:30 a.m. Did a 4.5 hour stream last night, and I'm back on camera recording a podcast just a few hours later, right? I love it. It's super fun. And I just want to make sure that there's a set schedule and I can plan some stuff out. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of keep the normal format of how I've been doing the podcast over the last 78 freaking episodes. I'm super happy that I'm back into a normal schedule for this podcast, because over the last year, I started dropping the ball a little bit where I wouldn't record a podcast, for a month and a half or so, mostly because I wasn't playing games. I wasn't really finding much to enjoy in video games last year. There was definitely a massive amount of games, but most of them didn't really connect with me, didn't really, didn't hold my interest. So I've been really struggling over the last year of trying to kind of connect with video games again. And I talked about it a little bit previously, where during the summertime, instead of playing normal video games, I transitioned into video game pinball. And it's actually really funny. My dad texted me this just a couple days ago about a company he was at where they had a Addams Family pinball table. He sent me a couple videos of him playing. I was like, oh, that is great. That's one of my favorite pinball tables. I did a whole YouTube video about my top 5 pinball tables from last year. And they're all video game versions of real arcade pinball tables. And man, Addams Family is probably one of my favorites. It's in my top 5. It was, I believe, the first one I talked about in that video, where they got Raul Julia and Angelica Houston to do the voiceover work for it. They actually brought them into a studio, recorded dialogue specifically for that pinball table. And there's some real good pulls on that. There's the graveyard, it's all ours. Or toxic waste, swamps, it's all ours. And then the mamushka and stuff like that. So it's a really cool pinball table, and it's one of my favorites. It's stinking hard though. It is a unbelievably difficult pinball table to actually get really good at, but it's one that I love going back to, playing for like half an hour at a time and just seeing how good I can get at it. I would love a real pinball table. They are very expensive. They take up a ton of space, and they're very hard to maintain. If you don't maintain it properly and take good care of it, especially in transition and moving, they could break in phenomenal ways. It is kind of a disappointment because my father-in-law actually has a dirty, hairy pinball table. And when they bought it, when they were transitioning it, moving it from one place to their house, in transition, the backboard, the dot matrix display actually broke. So you can't see what's happening. You don't know how many points you have. You don't know the storyline. You don't know where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. You can play the pinball table just fine, but that dot matrix display actually gives you the story and gives you the goals. And that's kind of what I really liked about those pinball tables and learning how pinball actually works. But luckily, if you have a really good table, there's also a ton of lights, and they're not there just to capture your attention. They actually direct your path towards the goals that you're supposed to accomplish. So I really thought that was pretty neat, and learning how pinball tables work was one of the joys of last summer, of the summer of 2023 for me, was learning how pinball tables actually work, because they're really, really complex, not just because of the machinery, but because of the design philosophy around them, and I just love it. All that to say, I've been playing some video games and really having a lot of fun with a ton of video games over the last few months here. Now, because I've been going through series fatigue, which again is a show, it's not the description of what I've been suffering with. Series fatigue is basically where I go through an entire video game series or franchise. I could call it franchise fatigue if I wanted to as well. Maybe I'll change the name. It really doesn't matter. There's no hardcore sticking point or rule. It is my, podcast and streaming schedule and all that stuff. But let me know if you think the name should be changed or not. However, all that being said, let's talk about some video games. So once I finished Donkey Kong Country, the Super Nintendo series, I kind of was sitting there going, okay, what's the next series I want to get to? Well, I could still go into Donkey Kong Country Returns that came out in 2010 on the Wii. But I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that game just yet. I kind of wanted to play a couple different things. So over the course of like a week or so, I was just kind of spinning my wheels going, okay, what am I going to play? What am I going to play? What am I going to play? And I did a bunch of other stuff. And then we went back to Donkey Kong Country Returns. I went through that. It was unbelievably difficult. I think I talked about it on the podcast last episode, but I found Donkey Kong Country Returns to be much, much more difficult and less fun than the Super Nintendo versions, because that was the era where a lot of people started reverting back to the old school, very difficult days of the NES, or Nintendo Entertainment System, design philosophy of games, where it was, let's just make this as hard and difficult as possible. And there was no real need for it in that era. Back in the NES era, there was a need for it because these games were really short. They were, half hour, 45 minutes. To complete the entire game. So you needed to make it hard so people wouldn't beat it in half an hour and then go return it. Because you could also return games for a full refund back then. You can't do that now. People will learn how to, rip games and then just return it for a full refund and then keep a copy of the game. You couldn't do that back then. So if you beat a game or you didn't like a game, you could just return it, and get your full money back. And so, that was a way to combat it by making it very, very difficult. In modern game design, these games aren't difficult for the sake of, let's make sure people don't beat it quickly. It's let's make sure that people don't beat it because it's difficult. And I don't like that design philosophy because it really tarnishes the experience. Maybe for me personally, but when I sit down and play a game, I want to have a good time with it. I want to have fun with it. I do want it challenging. I do want to have a challenge set before me that I can, put my nose to the grindstone per se and, accomplish that goal. And I want to have a challenge. I don't want to just have it be a cakewalk. And I am good enough at video games. I know my skill. I've been playing video games since 1988. I know I'm good. So when a game is hard for the sake of being hard, it becomes unfair. And that's where I have an issue. And that's where a lot of why I don't like Dark Souls as a series comes from, is because the games are not designed to give you a challenge. They're designed to be unfair. fair. They're designed to be difficult for the sake of being difficult, not because there's a challenge, not because, the enemy types are, interesting and you're working and progressing through a series of events to accomplish a goal. It's just to mess with you. And I don't like being messed with in that way. That's not fun for me. So that's really where it kind of grinds my gears a little bit, where I just really get upset with some of these games because I just see the behind the curtain. I see the real intent behind the game, and that's where I get really frustrated. And I was thinking about this last night as I was talking about Dark Souls while we were playing Cuphead last night. So I'm on this B boss, and I was having a real hard time with Joe and Mac on the Sega Genesis. And I could not get past the first dinosaur on Joe and Mac because the game is designed in a way just to throw stuff at you. And it just seems really, really unfair in a way. And there's not a good design around it. There's no concept of making it good. It's just, here's a bunch of crap on screen. You have to dodge it. And, once you get to the dinosaur boss, which is at the very beginning, it's 15 seconds into the game, and it's pretty much impossible. I sat there for like an hour playing that boss. I could not beat it. And it was, because I was talking, because I was streaming. If I sat down in a dark room, lights off, no one else around me, I could probably beat it in 5 minutes. A couple tries. But I was streaming, my mind was elsewhere, I was having conversations, I was making comments. My full attention wasn't on it. But that game doesn't perform well. It doesn't leave a good impression because it's not designed as good as something like Cuphead. Cuphead has good intentions behind it. It is boss fights with predetermined animations and phases and patterns that you learn. And I'm not big on memorization either with that type of stuff, but it is all designed in a cohesive way to make it, one singular story, one singular boss fight. In that boss fight, there is a story of what happens. First, the bee police come in and you got to take care of them. And then the queen comes in and goes, hey, you've defeated my, underling. Now I'm going to take care of you. And then you beat her in the second phase. And then you have to take on the bee queen who gets really angry. So there's a story progression within even that just basic boss fight. That is good game design. That is good storytelling. Something like Dark Souls, yes, there's an underline, but it's actually not really in the game, and you have to go outside to actually even learn anything of the game. You have to go on Wikipedia and all that crap, and let's not get into Dark Souls, right? It's not worth it. But I will say that I've been playing through a bunch of different games, and there's been some series that I really want to spend more time with. I really want to develop, a full understanding of the entire mode of beginning to end, first game to last game in the series. And so I started with Donkey Kong Country, and it went dormant for years after the Super Nintendo third game. With that third game, I really enjoyed what it had to offer. However, I think 3 was way easier than 1 and 2. I think 2 is the best game in that series, especially on the Super Nintendo trilogy, because it takes the concepts that started in 1 and then brings them up. It evolves them. It matures those ideas. Then with 3, it kind of lowered a lot of the challenge because it was geared more towards kids. You have Kiddy Kong, who is a baby, like an actual literal baby. And then the game over screen that, shows up, and it's like this, they're both in a crib with a little toy block spelling out game over. It's like, it has a very childlike look and design to it. Then we come back to the next decade in 2010, and we get Donkey Kong Country Returns. And that game, they kind of revert back to just Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Dixie Kong isn't there anymore. Kiddy Kong is out of the picture. Cranky Kong is there, but Funky and Candy Kong aren't. It's a weird game, and I just didn't enjoy it as much, mostly because of the challenge. There are some brutal sections that took me like 45 minutes to an hour to get past some levels. A boss fight that took me like an hour just because the phases were so long and the controls weren't very good. There was a little bit of lag and swing to the controls that just didn't feel very good. So I didn't really care for Donkey Kong Country Returns. Then I finally came back to Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and that is an amazing game. That is a well-done game. They take the concepts of coming back to the series with Donkey Kong Country Returns, and again, they mature, they redevelop some of that stuff in those ideas and make them full-fledged. And boy, it was such a more enjoyable experience to play Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze again. Unfortunately, I did the same mistake that I did back when I first played it. So when I first played that game, I got it when it came out. I played through the entire game until a certain point. This one boss fight that just really gave me some struggle, which was the walrus boss. You're climbing the mountain, there's snowy areas, and there's like avalanche levels and stuff, and it's really, really cool. But then I got to this boss fight with a walrus under, in the volcano. So there's a lot of lava and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, this is a pretty cool boss fight. I remember this boss fight. Back originally, when I first played that game back in 2014, yes, 2014, we're in 2024. This game is almost to the day a decade old. It came out in February of 2014. So almost 1 decade exactly. So I played through that game. I got to the walrus boss, and then for one reason or another, I just kind of dropped it. I went to a new game, and then I forgot about Tropical Freeze for like a year until my friend actually came over and we started playing it again, double multiplayer, co-op. And I had a real good time like restarting that game. So I loaded up my game save after he left, and I loaded up that boss and I went, okay, now I feel like I can move forward with the story. I want to beat this game. I want to see the next levels. I beat the walrus boss and the end credits roll. And I go, oh man, I was on the final boss and I just dropped it. I could have beat this game and put it in my library of finished games a year ago if I would have just stuck and finished the boss. So I thought that was really funny, and I would always tell that story whenever I talk about Tropical Freeze. So coming back to it now with the intent of, hey, I'm going to actually do this again. I was streaming it. I was having a good time over the course of 2 streams. In the second stream, I did a stream for about 4.5, 5 hours. And I was playing through all the levels, having a really good time until I got to the pufferfish boss. And that pufferfish boss destroyed me. That took like an hour to do. I don't know why, because I don't remember having a hard time with it the first time through. But this time streaming it, I had a really, really, really tough time. It just destroyed my, my steely vigor. And I got really upset on stream, and I'm not proud of it. And I had to walk away for a few minutes, come back, and then finish it off. And once I did, we moved past it, right? We kept going through the levels until we got to the walrus boss. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this walrus boss. It's getting late. It's 7:20. My wife's waiting for dinner and all this stuff. So I was streaming, and I was having a few people watching me, some viewers from Brazil of all places, which was super cool. And we started talking, and he's cheering me on and stuff. And the viewers are all getting behind me, sending emotes in the chat. And I'm like, dude, I've got a crowd of people watching me. I gotta finish this. But I kept dying and dying and dying and dying over and over and over again, to the point where I'm like, dude, I I have to walk away from this. 1, because I'm getting a little bit frustrated. 2, because it's so late. 3, because I've been streaming for 5 hours. I got to get up and walk around. My legs are, starting to feel numb and stuff. So it was like, look, we're going to come back to this a little bit later in the second stream of the evening at 11 p.m. I'll come back and I'll finish it. And then we'll move forward in the story. Unbeknownst to me, because I forgot, because it's been a decade since I played the game, that it's the exact same boss that I walked away from the first time, where it's the final boss of the game. And I kind of wish I would have just stuck with it. It was good to walk away. Obviously, my family and dinner with my wife is way more important than beating a boss on stream. But it was a bummer that I walked away from that boss without finishing it, because I would have finished the game and I would have walked away from the stream feeling a lot better, going, all right, cool. I beat Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze in 2 streams. And that would have been really fun to say, but I walked away from it. I came back. And then unfortunately on that evening's stream, when I was playing it, I had a much harder time with the stream itself. There was a ton of technical issues and errors. Twitch kept dropping the stream in the middle of it. So like it would go for 10 minutes and then drop it and kill the stream and then come back automatically. And then the recording of me beating that game just got broken. So just there's no, video footage of me beating that game on stream again. And it's kind of a bummer. But it was a really fun experience, and I had a lot of fun with it, and it's a way, way, way better game than Donkey Kong Country Returns. It controls way better. The fluid and movement of the characters are much more precise. There's not as much jerky motion to it. It looks way better too. Like there's a lot of just little nuances, like the camera swooping in on the intro of each level, kind of going through a 3-dimensional space. So it's not just side scrolling like Donkey Kong Country Returns. Also, in the vehicle levels, or even some extra areas in some levels, they actually do camera angle movements where the camera will swing back behind Donkey Kong. And again, it creates this 3D depth to the world that you just don't really see normally with that game. So there's a ton of extra care and love and creation for it. I played the Switch version, which looks really good. And it had funky mode on it, which funky mode, unfortunately, is just easy mode. And I was bummed out to learn that. I thought I was going to be able to play as Funky Kong and, have a real good challenging time with the game. Unfortunately, Funky Kong is just straight up easy mode. You get an extra heart. He's way easier to do to go through the level and stuff. And I was just bummed out. Like, they made him easy mode? Aw, come on. So I had a real fun time with the game, but there was a couple frustrating parts. The bosses. And it's really funny too, because like I said, the puffer boss that really got me upset. The pufferfish boss was the hardest part of the entire game. I finally beat him after like an hour of trying. And I went through the next world, got to the next boss, which is a polar bear. And I beat the polar bear boss on the first try. Without dying. I think I might have gotten hit once out of the total number of life that I had. I got hit once with that boss, beat him on the first try, and moved on. But the pufferfish boss, which you would think would be easier than the next level boss, that gave me so much grief that I almost wanted to quit the game. And then also the final boss was pretty tough too. And if you know me at all, I hate boss fights. I think they're one of the worst parts about video games. I do not enjoy them at all. I hate the repetition. I hate the animation. Most of the time, especially in Nintendo games, boss fights have this very strict rule of you have 2 or 3 patterns within the first phase. You hit them 3 times. They go into a phase change, do their attacks again, pretty much the same thing, but faster. And then you hit them 3 times again. And then you move into the third phase of the boss fight and you have that transition period. And then you have to hit them 3 more times and then go through that. And Cuphead has, kind of the same, standard of 3 phases most of the time for bosses and all that stuff. But I think, again, Cuphead is just it's leagues and leagues above, most boss fights. They're designed in a very different way. But Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze follows the standard animation. You have to go through it. Like, just starting and having to restart a boss fight in that game is just arduous. You feel like you're just waiting forever for everything to happen. And this is why I have a problem with boss fights. Once you learn the basic first pattern, which takes maybe 1 try, maybe 2 at most, then you are wasting your time. You are spinning your wheels for like 2 minutes straight, going, okay, the boss fight is going to shoot 1 fireball at me. It's going to go really slow across the screen. I have to jump over it. Okay, I've jumped over it. Now I got to wait for the boss to kind of get mad and move over to the other side of the screen, do it again, throw the fireball. It's going to go the same speed. I'm going to jump over it. Like, you can already see that it just takes forever and it's unfun. You are just waiting for the boss to do its animation. And I hate that. And it's kind of funny because we were playing Sonic 2 on the Sega Genesis last night. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, one of my favorite Sonic game, last night on stream. And I kind of noticed that when you fight Robotnik, yes, Dr. Robotnik, none of this Dr. Eggman garbage. When you're fighting Dr. Robotnik, you can actually damage him multiple times in a single, phase or a single attack mode. As opposed to later Sonic games, because I did play Sonic Superstars on stream a few months ago when that came out. And the boss fights for that follow the very strict Nintendo rules of you can attack and hit the boss once. You can't hit it multiple times in a certain section or attack. And it becomes much, 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 much worse for that fact. Like, it just becomes this really locked down, just slog through mud and molasses to fight this boss when I should be able to hit him as many times as I want, as many times as I can get a hit in without getting hit myself and being knocked back. And that's what Sonic 2 does versus, something like Tropical Freeze or what was the other example? Sonic Superstars. All these modern boss fights have a worse boss fight standard. And maybe because they know that people will spam the attack. Maybe they'll break the game that in a way that the developers didn't know that were going to happen, because you do see that. You see these exploits now that you didn't see back then in the day, because we didn't have, cheat codes we couldn't break the game in the ways that we can now back then. Like, we cannot load the game up in an emulator and do save states. We couldn't load the game up with memory clearers and stuff like that, like a Steam, Steam cheat and stuff like that, where it scans memory and then allows you to break the game in sequence break and all that crap. So it is just kind of a very different atmosphere nowadays in this era, modern era of gaming. So I can kind of see why developers would want to stick to the strict standard boss fight rules of when you have an opening, you can attack, but you can only hit the boss once, because we want you to see the phases. We want you to see all the animations that we put time into. I get it. But when they do that, it makes the boss fight less fun, unenjoyable, and really, really slow and boring, and it takes forever. And that's one of the reasons why I really hated Sonic Superstars. It looked cool on the outside, but once I started playing it, I went, this is a terrible game. This is such a crappy, boring game. They're sticking to very basic video game design standards from the 90s without really understanding why it's still highly regarded. So there's no love, there's no, wiggle room in those standards now, which kind of sucks. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I beat Donkey Kong Country Returns. Once I did that, then I moved on to a new series. I was like, well, let's play something a little bit enjoyable. And we started playing StarFox 64, and I kind of regret playing it out of order because I then went through the entire StarFox series. Those games are really short, so I could beat a game in a single stream. I can beat several of those games in a single stream. I started with StarFox 64, and I had a really, really, really good time. And I went, dude, you know what? I haven't beat StarFox, the original Super Nintendo StarFox, in years. So I went back after I beat StarFox 64 on stream. Then I went back to StarFox and beat that on stream. And that was a lot of fun. That was a real joy because I haven't played through that game in years. I did play, the last time I played StarFox was in 2017 when the Super Nintendo Classic came out. Yeah, the Super Nintendo mini consoles. Remember those? Nintendo was kind of big on those for a while. They did an NES version and then a Super NES version. I have both of those, and I think they're actually really cool little pieces of collector memorabilia / just something entertaining. So when they did the Super Nintendo Classic, and they're the mini consoles, everyone calls it the Super Nintendo Mini or the NES Mini, but they are actually called classics. I actually like that naming scheme a lot more than just mini, but that's neither here nor there. When they released that, they had StarFox on it. And so that was the last time I played StarFox. I don't remember if I played it all the way through or not. I could check my notes because I do keep a list of every single video game that I beat. And so I could probably see if there was a StarFox that was beat during 2017 when I got that system. But the real cool thing about that game, that little mini console classic system, is they finally released StarFox 2. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the whole craziness about StarFox 2, it was the sequel to StarFox, which StarFox came out in 1993. In 1996, they were developing StarFox 2 alongside StarFox 64 because the Nintendo 64 was coming out that year. And so when they started finalizing StarFox 2, they were showing it off at E3, getting ready for it to release a few months later. And Nintendo, in their infinite wisdom, for whatever reason, saying this game is basically complete, let's shelve it. And we're all kind of familiar with that concept now because of, some of the controversy starting about Warner Brothers and them making these movies like the Batgirl movie or the Wile E. Coyote versus Acme movie, and having these feature complete movies that they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on over the course of several years, and then just saying, hey, these movies are ready to be released. Instead of releasing them, we're not going to make that much money on them probably, so we're going to just shelve them and collect a tax break on them instead. And it's wild. Like, everyone's up in arms. Nintendo did that in 1996 with StarFox 2. And so when that Super Nintendo Classic came out in 2017, Nintendo finally said, look, this is what we're going to do. To drum up some business, to drum up some fervor in internet, articles, we're going to finally release in its full state StarFox 2 as a, special if you play or beat, I can't remember which, StarFox on the classic console. So if you load up if you buy the classic console for X amount of dollars, I think it was like $100, and then you play through StarFox, if you beat the game or complete an X amount of level or something, you will unlock this never before released video game that we've had sitting on the shelf for over 2 decades. So it was unbelievable. We just all lost our collective minds when that came out. And that's why that Super Nintendo Classic was so hard to find. It was so hard to get. It was just crazy. But we finally got it and I played through it and I had a blast with it. I think there's a lot of stuff that StarFox 2 does really, really well. So I haven't played it since 2017. I did a little article on it 2 years ago when I was doing the Retrocember for 2022. I did an article about StarFox 2, but I only played a couple levels. I never beat it again. So on stream, we already played through StarFox 64, then I played through StarFox, then I went through StarFox 2. And again, remember, StarFox games are short. They be completed within less than an hour. So I went through StarFox 2, and I remembered why I love that game so much. They just expand on the StarFox 1 model. It runs pretty well. There is definitely some real bad slowdown when you get into certain areas in that game, way worse than StarFox 1. But they expand on the map, the storyline, the characters, the locations, the vehicles, just everything is done bigger and better in StarFox 2. And it's such a bummer that they didn't release it back then, because I would have loved StarFox 2 if it came out back then in 1996 like it was supposed to. Or 97, I can't remember. The copyright on the title screen of StarFox 2 does say 1997, so I'm not sure if it is 97 or 96 that was supposed to be released. With that, I do love the fact that StarFox 2 takes the concepts of StarFox 1 and just blows them out of proportion, like just explodes them, makes them so much more cool. The map in StarFox 2 basically splits it into a real-time tower defense game in a certain way, where at the bottom left corner of the screen where you spawn, you have Corneria. It's your home planet. And Corneria has a damage meter of a percentage. As you're playing through the game and progressing from level to level, you can kind of fly around the map, kind of like a Mass Effect in a way. The Mass Effect Galaxy map, you can kind of fly around, and in some cases, there are Reaper ships that, spawn in and start following you. Same thing back in 1996 with StarFox 2. But StarFox 2, there's things that are going towards your home planet, Corneria. And if it gets to Corneria, it starts damaging it. And if Corneria takes 100% damage, the game is over. Like, you just lose. It doesn't matter how far you've progressed. It doesn't matter if you've taken hits or not, or taken any damage in levels, if you've lost a life or not. If Corneria takes 100% damage, the game is over. So you have to manage Corneria on the map screen and in the levels as well, because as I was playing through some of the levels, in the middle of a level, I got a big old notification in the top left corner of the screen saying, hey, Corneria just took 32% damage by a missile strike. And it's like, wow, this game is deep. It's much deeper than it looks like. So just on the fact of that alone, it's just a much deeper game than StarFox original, number 1. And then you also have the expanded universe kind of starting to open up, allowing you to learn about Starwolf and Fox's dad and some new characters. You have the 3 classic other characters. You have Slippy Toad, Falco Lombardi, and Peppy Hare as your wingmates. You are StarFox, this team of rogue, helpers across the galaxy. So there's 4 of you, but then you also have the incorporation of Faye and Miyu, which are 2 new teammates that I don't believe ever show up in any of the other games. They're definitely not in StarFox 64, and they don't show up in StarFox Assault. So it's kind of a little bit weird and crazy that they show up in StarFox 2 but never were in any of the other games. And then you have the rivalry of Starwolf, the rival team. And Starwolf, who used to run with your dad, Pigma, which also used to run with your dad, and then you have, I can't remember the other 2. Starwolf, Pigma, there's Leon, the gecko or lizard, and then maybe one other one I can't remember. But having those characters show up too in that game and kind of, antagonize you in a way, and then you get to fight them. And it's not just a normal StarFox fight, it's a dogfight in space. Dogfighting in space on a Super Nintendo, it doesn't look very good, but for the time, it looked incredible. And you kind of have to play these older classic games with that mindset, with that frame of reference of this is what it was like in the day. You can't look at it modernly going, there's 18 frames of animation per second. It's garbage compared to my 120 frame hertz monitor. Like you can't compare it. You have to look at it objectively with the frame of reference of the time that it came out in. And looking at it like that, you go, this game is incredible. This game is doing so many things ahead of its time with such a underpowered system and console that was, the Nintendo 64 was already out when this game was being developed or was going to be released. And that's partly why it wasn't released. Nintendo said, we've got StarFox 64 in the pipeline. It's going to come out the next year. And if we put out StarFox 2 right now and then StarFox 64, we're going to kind of cannibalize our own sales because StarFox 64 is going to be so much better than StarFox 2. People buy StarFox 2, they're going to go, this looks like garbage compared to what's going to come out in a few months from now with StarFox 64. So there's the reasoning behind it. However, I think it was a boneheaded move because it's still a good game. If it's a good game, it will sell. It will have a market. It will have that cult feature, behind it. Cult classic, whatever you want to call it. Cult following, that's what I was thinking of. You're going to have those people who are still going to enjoy it no matter what. And I think especially with businesses, you have to realize that not every product is going to appeal to every single demographic. You make the games for the audience that you want to have, and those people will be loyal if you put out a good product, period. Doesn't matter how many people buy it in the grand scheme of things, because brand loyalty is a thing. People will stick to brands just because they think it's a superior or good product. Period. So it's a bummer Nintendo never released it, but we finally did get a release. And yes, I did play the leaked version that came out on the internet, back in 2003 on my modded Xbox, but it ran like garbage. It was in Japanese, so I couldn't really tell what was going on. And it didn't really perform all that well, but we finally got a full true ROM of it. And boy, I own StarFox 2. Legally too, because I do own a Super NES Classic, and I was able to pull that ROM off and put it on Launchbox and be able to play it on stream. And it is just super, super, super awesome. So I've been having a lot of fun with StarFox 64. And man, it's just been a great, 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 great time. Oh man. So we've been playing some StarFox, and then we went to TMNT, the Turtles. And I'm actually wearing a Ninja Turtles t-shirt today in enjoyment of that celebration of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games. All right. So with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, I actually owned the Turtles arcade cabinet. I actually owned the big old 1990 Konami-based arcade cabinet. And I had it in the store that I used to own as well. And it always brought in people. I would always get people going, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you have a Ninja Turtles arcade game. This is my favorite game of all time. So that was just a blast to own. I loved that thing. And what I did the other night, was it last night? It was last night. On last night's stream, we played through not just Ninja Turtles, but Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. I personally think Turtles 1, the 1990 Turtles game, is better than Turtles in Time. I think Turtles in Time has more animation, more combat moves, some interesting level choices as well. But I prefer the classic Turtles versus Turtles in Time. It's just me personally. I think the boss fights are a little bit better. I think the storyline makes a little bit more sense. That's my personal preference. But we had a lot of fun with that. And then we had Chippendale's Rescue Rangers, which I played on the NES back in the day. It was one of the games that I owned. It was a Disney Capcom joint. And those Disney Capcom NES games were so good. Oh my gosh, they were fun. And so we played a lot of those over the course of the I played a lot of those over the release schedule. They had Darkwing Duck, Chippendales 1 and 2, Tailspin. They had a lot of Disney classic games. However, I only played Chippendales Rescue Rangers 1, but there was a Chippendales Rescue Rangers 2. And I never really played through it. I played through the first level several times in my life, but I never really got deep into it. There's a reason for that I found out yesterday. So while I was playing through Chippendales 1, I finished it, and I was like, yeah, that was really fun, because the last time I played it was with my friend, and we got through most of the game, but I wasn't really paying attention. I wasn't really strategizing. I was just kind of goofing around. And I kept dying and losing my life. And he would beat the boss and I would just kind of die. And so what happened was we got to Fat Cat, the last boss, and I used all my lives and all my continues. So I got a game over, and then he actually beat the boss. And I was like, oh man, we didn't beat it together. He beat the boss by himself, and those bosses are super easy. It's more of all the deaths and quick jumps that you might fall and die and lose the life over. But the other night I played through it on stream, and I was like, okay, well, we played through Rescue Rangers 1, let's do Rescue Rangers 2. And so I loaded it up on the evening stream, and I was immediately disappointed. I was so bummed out because it is so much worse somehow. It came out several years after Chippendales 1, same developers as well, but it looks worse, it plays worse, it just is a worse version overall, and it makes no sense. You would think a sequel would have better graphics, better budget, better storytelling, better everything. And yeah, the storytelling is probably a little bit better. It's more cohesive. There is cutscenes, but they're long. I mean, for an NES game, like, it's just the title scroll of those characters and those dialogue sequences are just super slow. So, man, it was a bummer to play part of it, and I just had to stop at some point. I just had to stop. So that is what I've been playing through the stream over the last couple of weeks here, since I did the last episode of the podcast. And now I got to figure out, oh man, what am I going to do? It's Super Bowl Sunday, so we'll probably play some sports games. We'll probably play a little bit of NFL Blitz. What do you say? But before we get to those games, before we start actually playing games, I want to talk about what I'm looking forward to. And if you've been listening to the podcast over the last couple of weeks here, I'm kind of going to say the same thing. I'm looking forward to Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remastered. It looks good. It's cheap. It's going to come out next week on Wednesday, which is Valentine's Day, which I think is a weird choice for a release game of Lara Croft, but hey, whatever. And I think that's going to be a really fun game to do series fatigue with. I played through just a little bit of Tomb Raider 1 back in December for the Retrocember series, because I did a video a day, one video per day on a PlayStation game. And I did cover Tomb Raider 1 in that video series. So I did play a couple levels. I got to the T-Rex, I moved on, and then I stopped playing because I had to cover other stuff and do other videos. But Tomb Raider has always been one of my favorite series. Ever since 2 came out. 2 was the first game that I played. And I played it on the PC. And boy, that was a crazy game for young, I think I was in 7th grade at the time, young me to play. But it was it was a really, really good game. You even have the training sequence or level where you're running around Lara's mansion and she's got the butler. And the whole thing with the butler is you can actually trap him in the fridge. And I remember always trying to trap the butler in the fridge. That was so fun. Oh man, I'm looking forward to the remaster of Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 because 1, I don't have a lot of experience with, 2, I do, and then 3, I don't remember. I might have never beat 3. I did own it. I got it for Christmas one year, but I never beat Tomb Raider 3. And then what's also coming out at the end of the month is Star Wars Dark Forces. Star Wars Dark Forces is going to be a remaster. It comes out at the very end of the month on February 28th. But I remember Dark Forces. My grandpa bought us our Windows 95
Video games
computer.
1980
I remember
said
it came
video
with a
and audio
couple
is out of
CDs.
sync.
And it had some shareware. One of those CDs had Dark Forces on it. And I don't know if you've played Dark Forces or not, but it's a first-person shooter Star Wars game where you play as I believe you play as a stormtrooper. I could be wrong. Maybe it's infiltrating the stormtrooper base and you're kind of dressed up as a stormtrooper. I believe it's Kyle Katarn for that character. It's been a very long time since I played Dark Forces. Since I think 1997, 98 is when I played that game last. I've booted it up probably a few times, but I've never gotten past the first level when I boot it up. I boot it up, play for 5 minutes, and then I stop. Just go, oh yeah, that's right. This is a Doom clone because that's what it is. It's a Doom clone. I believe it's based on the Doom engine as well. But we're getting a remaster of it, and I hope it looks great. I think it does. I remember what the trailer looked like. I went, oh, this looks pretty good. That's going to be fun. So that's coming out on February 28th, and I'm really, really excited about it. So I'm still trying to struggle through what should I play? What are the next games that I'm going to play as? And I'm going to do arcade games a little bit more. I want to come back to some NES platformers as well. But stick around for all these streams because I'm going to have a real, real, real good time with them. And then to kind of round out this podcast and finish up the podcast, we're going to talk about the game of the month. We're in February, and February is Like a Dragon, the entire series. However, we're kind of getting towards the middle of the month, and I've only played Like a Dragon a couple times on stream. It is a game that is a little bit hard to stream. The reason why is because it's so dialogue and cutscene heavy. I am not a person to talk over cutscenes. If I'm sitting around chewing the fat with my friends and all that, sure, but I'm actually really into the stories of this Yakuza and Like a Dragon series. I think they are really well done, just unbelievably produced and phenomenally well written. Epic, grandiose stories following decades of a character's life and all the different stuff that happens. And so these games deserve me to be able to sit back, shut up, and watch, right? And so that's kind of what I do. And there's definitely a lot of people who don't like that. They want me to talk over it, but I'm not going to do that. And I'm playing these games for myself. If you want to watch, hey, awesome. I'll give you some really good information about the game series and my opinions on them. And I think I can talk extremely well about why these games are well produced, why they're well loved. And you're going to get some better understanding of that over the course of watching me play it. But I'm not going to disrespect the game by talking over the cutscenes and making fun of them when they are actual serious moments. And I talked about it in Game of the Year with Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. Whew, that's a title, right? That's a mouthful. But when you get Kiryu's final cutscene, which is like 45 minutes long, it's basically a short movie. That's really hard to just sit on a computer watching a stream of someone watching a cutscene, right? So I can see why people don't want me streaming it or don't want to watch me stream it, but it's Game of the Month. I like a Dragon. Kasuga Ichiban is a really interesting character, and he is getting a much more rounded character as I play through this game. And over the course of the last several streams that I've been playing, I have seen him develop into a little bit more rounded character. He's not the hothead that he started out as. He does really care for people just like Kiryu does. And so they're kind of the opposite sides of the same coin. They both have a lot of similar characteristics, but one is more hot-headed than the other, but you can see him kind of like being a little bit more rounded out as the story progresses. Ichiban, that is. And I've been really, really enjoying my time with that game. So I will be playing Game of the Month. And Game of the Month, again, it's a show like all the other shows, Series Fatigue, Arcade Action, Retro Game Nights, where there's a theme to it. And so we're going to be doing Game of the Month streams every Monday. Whether that's afternoon and evening, or just afternoon or just evening, I haven't decided yet. But Game of the Month Mondays is kind of where I'm going with it. Makes it a little bit easier to remember and does allow me set times to play through these games no matter what, because they're long, they're exhausting, but there's some really, really, really good stuff. And also some really, really crazy stuff as well. I don't know if you watched the YouTube short or not, but I would highly suggest checking out the Game or Die channel and looking at the YouTube short, the first one that I did. It was my first YouTube short that I did, because I hate vertical video. I think vertical video is horrible. It is one of the worst trends that I've seen over the course of the last decade. But I did a vertical video, I did a YouTube short, and it's just showcasing Game of the Month, where I was playing Like a Dragon, and this section that I knew actually happened in the game. I remember seeing a quick look of it. And this section happens where Kazuma is helping this guy who has a brand new newborn baby, and he has to get some formula for the baby. And the mafia, the Yakuza, have this lockdown on baby formula for whatever reason. So every store that this guy goes to that Ichiban is trying to help, the Yakuza has already taken the baby formula. So he finally finds some baby formula, and he goes, okay, my baby needs it. Thank you so much, Ichiban, for helping me. But then outside, as they're standing in this alleyway, they hear this baby cry, and they go, oh no, someone else's baby sounds like they really need this formula. Let's go give it to them. Maybe we'll split it or whatever happens. So they go to this building, they walk in the door, and they go, hey, we heard a baby crying. Here's I have some formula. Maybe we can split it. And they look in the building, and it's like this nursery area, like the walls are painted blue with sunflowers and all this stuff. And they look on the ground, and as they hear baby cries, they look at it, and it spans across the camera, and you see these grown men in diapers flailing on the ground like babies, crying like babies. It's such an awkward, weird scene. And it's played for comedic effect, obviously. And Ichiban and the guy that you're helping are just like, what is going on? You realize that these are Yakuza dressed up like babies because it's some weird pervert fetish thing that they're into. And this one lady is like, trying to calm them down, go, oh, there, it's okay, let me burp you and stuff. And you're just like, this is super weird and awkward. I don't like this at all. And it's unbelievable. And so as I was streaming this, I just could not believe what I was seeing. And so I put my hands on my face and I go, oh no, what is happening? This is so weird. I don't like this. And so I'll use that as a quick showcase for the YouTube short to say, look, this game that I'm streaming for Game of the Month is weird, but it's super funny as well. And so I had a lot of fun with that. And Game of the Month just is a game that I'm going to play throughout the month that I want to showcase. And I think showcasing Like a Dragon or the Yakuza series needs to happen. They're games that take a long time to get through, but they're really, 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 really fun. And sometimes they're weird and kind of a little bit awkward, but also they have a lot of heart to them. You go through the other stories that I've been playing on that game through Game of the Month that I've been streaming, and you'll see Ichiban, find this lady whose grandfather is about to get killed in this nursing home, and they uncover this whole plot about how they euthanize the patients and they collect the insurance money, which is more money, and on top of the money that they're scamming people out of this nursing home. And it's just like, man, the way that these characters who are, portrayed as some undesirable people, they're actually really good in their heart. And it brings that human emotion into it like no other video game that I ever encountered. You've got some really good, even some cutscenes in Kingdom Hearts have that, oh my gosh, I'm swelling up because of friendship and love and blah, blah, blah. But I think Yakuza, for all its weirdness, takes those concepts and does them better than anyone else I've ever seen in any other video game I've ever seen. And so that's why I love that series. That's why I love Like a Dragon and Yakuza, and why I want to showcase it for Game of the Month, because it's just so much better than anything else out there. It's so, 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 so good. So that is the Game of the Month. We're still in February. We're still the beginning. It's the 11th. So we've got a couple weeks more of Like a Dragon Game of the Month streams that we're going to be doing. We'll be doing more tomorrow. And I encourage people to check that out, because yes, they're weird. Yes, they've got long cutscenes. It is in Japanese as well, but it is subtitled, and they're just enjoyable, and I enjoy them, and I want to show people, hey, maybe this is a game that you've never even seen before. Because I remember hearing about Yakuza, but I never really saw it played until 2017 when Yakuza 0 came out. And with Yakuza 0, I watched people play that game and I went, oh my gosh, this is way different than what I thought it was going to be. Yes, it's got some action. It's got crazy stuff happening. It's way over the top in certain cases, but it also has some real subtle, dramatic moments. And they're done so much better than any other video game that I can imagine. You think Metal Gear and Final Fantasy have good cutscenes. They've got nothing on Yakuza. Like a Dragon is such a special series. So that's going to do it for this episode of Game of the Month. This episode of Game or Die's podcast, episode 78. I'm going to try and do them every Sunday as much as I possibly can, depending on my schedule. But I do like talking about these games. And yeah, these episodes are a little bit shorter than some of the previous ones because I wasn't recording for like a month at a time. So I would have a good chunk of games to talk about. But if I do it every week, the episodes are a little bit shorter, which I think people like shorter podcasts. And, it's a little bit easier for me to do a hour-long podcast episode instead of a 2-hour long podcast episode, especially by myself. Like, I've been talking for an hour straight, and it's a blast. But that's all I've got on the plate. I'm looking forward to Expeditions, the SnowRunner sequel, but that's not coming out until the beginning of March 5th. For right now, next week, we're going to start Tomb Raider when that shows up on Wednesday. So we'll have Wednesday's stream be Tomb Raider. So I hope you guys join for that. And Dark Forces at the end of the month. That remaster is going to be really fun. But man, all of February is the only 2 games that are being released that I'm looking forward to are remasters of old games, which is kind of a bummer. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of that in this year. I think 2024 is going to be the year of subtle releases, like 3 really big games that I'm super excited about, but everything else is going to be very small indie games or remasters of games. And they're going to be sprinkled throughout the year because everything came out last year. All the big name titles came out last year. So I don't know what this year is going to hold. We're already deep into the second month of the year, and there's really not been a whole lot that has captivated my attention. I played the finals earlier in January. That was fun, but it's a multiplayer game. I had my fill within just 3 or 4 hours of gameplay with that. I'm not a big multiplayer gamer, but I've been having a lot of fun playing some other stuff. And so if you check out any of my stuff, if you want more information about, the games that I've been playing, I've been writing a lot of reviews over the last several weeks, or I've been doing these podcasts and all that stuff. You can check that out at gameordie.net. That's a website that I own. I self-host. I realized it went down last night, which is a bummer, so I had to restart the server here. But once it came back up, it's all there. Same thing with the podcast. It's all self-hosted. None of it's paid for, which is a bummer because I could guarantee that it would be up all the time. But I think my uptime is still in the 90th percentile, so it's usually up. If it's not for whatever reason, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to restart the server really quick. But gameordie.net is where I host all my articles and game reviews. So every time I beat a game on stream, I try and write a quick review for it. Sometimes it's super quick and just, like probably a page or two. Sometimes it's a more in-depth analysis of the entire game and my thoughts on the game series. Like with the Donkey Kong Country stuff, I think I wrote more information on that than some of the StarFox game reviews because they're very short games. How much can you say in a review of a game that takes half an hour to beat, right? You can't say a whole lot. And I've already talked about it throughout the stream. I do a little bit of a overview when I beat the game and scroll. When we watch the credits, I kind of give my overthoughts on that too. So I love video games. I don't know about you, but that's like my main hobby. It's what I love doing. It's what I love talking about. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate about it. Writing game reviews also is super fun. Streaming video games, making YouTube videos on video games and all that type of stuff. I do want to do more VR. VR is one of the other things that I'm really passionate about. I did a VR video several years ago. I never got to complete it, but I did put out on YouTube what I did complete and put that up as a quote unquote work in progress video, kind of to motivate me to make another version of it, a part two, a part or a remaster of it perhaps. And I would still love to do that. But again, just so many things are taking up my time now, especially with streaming becoming such a big part of my life over the last month and a half, that I just haven't had the time. All of that to be saying, thank you. Thank you, every single person who watches this stream, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube or Kick or X or Instagram or wherever it's streaming. If you're just listening to the podcast, thank you. I appreciate every single person who just sits there and listens to me talk about video games. I hope that my opinion rings true for you. I hope that when you listen to me talk about it, you know, hey, it's coming from a developed thought process. It's not just a quick, quote unquote, hot take. And I hate that phrase because it's just a quick off the cuff, off the top of your head response to a opinion that you have without actually thinking about it. Most people, when they give their opinions on YouTube or the internet in general, they just give their quick opinion and then it's in the ether. It's just, yeah, I'm done. That's my opinion of it. And they stick with that initial opinion without actually thinking on it and really cultivating a real opinion. That's what I tried to do. I tried to cultivate a real opinion with my game reviews and sitting there through the credits of a game and thinking back on the experience I had with that game to go, you know what, that's a pretty good game. Or, you know what, this game could have done this better. I try not to be negative on games. I do think there are instances where I do need to be negative on a game for one reason or another, but I really do try to keep my opinion as positive as possible while dealing actual criticism. And actual criticism means this game didn't do this well. The developer could have done this differently. But overall, I had a better experience than a poorer experience. Something like that. That's kind of the general hope and desire for doing all this stuff, is to showcase games as an art form, because that's what they are, and not just say it's a product. And this product is bad, you shouldn't buy it, or this product is amazing, so you should buy it. It's, do you like this style of art? Did this artist, this company who created this art, do a good job conveying their artistic vision or not? And that, I think, is so much more important than not doing that. And when you see these YouTube videos that just review games as a product, or if you see these people just doing game reviews as a product only, I think they lose sight that it's an amalgamation. It's a combination of a little bit of a product, mostly a product, let's be honest, but it's a product of a piece of art. It's selling art. And that is something I see a lot of people miss when they talk about video games. So hopefully I can convey that to the listeners and to the viewers of the stream in a way that makes you want to stick around, makes you want to listen more, makes you want to read more of my reviews to get an alternative view of what you see on the internet. Because let's be honest, there's only a few select video game outlets that we all see, but most of their opinions are bought and paid for, or they are towing one line of a narrative that you see in media overall that is completely skewed and bought and paid for. Because if not, if they say something that differs from the opinion of their leaning side, then they'll be outcast and they'll get demoted for it, and all that stuff. And it's crazy, but it's true. You'll see people spout off these, oh, you're a conspiracy theory and as conspiracy theorist and stuff. And it's like, no, you just don't like the truth. Without getting way too crazy and political there at the end. Sorry about that. But it's true. You got to really pay attention to who you listen to. And hopefully, if you listen to me, you will realize like, oh, dude, this dude knows what he's talking about. And he's not a crazy person either. But that's me. That's going to do it for the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy it. I did hit affiliate on Twitch a few weeks ago, and that unlocks a lot of extra stuff. And I'm always taking suggestions. If you go, man, I really like your stream, but I would rather you do this, or would love to see you pivot over here or do this type of thing, whether it's, soundboards on the stream or, icons or emotes, or I would rather you play this game and not this game. Yakuza's kind of a little bit boring. I'd rather watch you play this on Mondays for Game of the Month. Dude, let me know. And the best way to let me know is either chatting one-on-one as we do in the chat while I stream, or a better way is to go to the Discord. There's a Discord link on any platform that you look at while you're watching me stream. And that Discord is, we're just a small community. We're trying to grow. But it is straight up the best way that you can get in touch with me to tell me, hey, here's a suggestion, or here's a funny clip that I saw of your stream. I wanted to share it with you. And if you did this, I think it would be better. I'm always open to that. Open criticism. Again, don't be mean-hearted about it. And I think that's why a lot of streamers don't like criticism, because people take it way too personally. If you post your criticism in the lens of, hey, this is something that you do that I don't think is very good for the stream or, your podcast or whatever. I think it would be much better if you did it this way. that is valid criticism. If you go, you suck and I hate you and I hope you stop streaming, like that's not valid criticism. Come on. And no one does that. And no one needs that. That's mean-hearted. But if you say, I would rather you do this, or this is the thing that you do that I don't like watching, yeah, that's valid. And I think that's okay. So that is the best way to tell me if you like the stream or not, or if you like the podcast or not. Just join the Discord. If you don't know where to find the Discord, if you can't find the link, go to the website, gameordie.net. Instead of .com, it's .net. I couldn't get the .com years ago when I started this whole endeavor back in 2018. I finally got a .net in 2019, and we've been going ever since on that. So gameordie.net, that is the website. There's a link at the top for the Discord, and that's where you can just chat. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with any single person that listens to this podcast. I am not one of those people that disregards your opinion. I value every single person's opinion, whether it's good or bad, to the degree of which it remains to be seen. It depends on a case-by-case basis. But, oh boy, that's enough of me rambling for now. Thank you so much for watching. This is the Game or Die podcast. You can catch it on any podcatcher. Just search Game or Die and you'll find it. Or again, go to the gameordie.net website. But until then, thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next stream. Bye.